When Americans celebrate the 4th of July, most people think they're celebrating independence. But here's the twist. The most important part of the Declaration of Independence wasn't that it declared freedom from Britain. Many countries have declared independence. Most of those documents have been forgotten. This one changed the world. The Declaration's greatest achievement wasn't creating a new nation. It was introducing a revolutionary idea that would inspire people for centuries to come. To understand why, we have to travel back to 1776. At that time, the 13 American colonies stretched along the eastern coast of North America. For more than 150 years, they had been part of the British Empire. They traded with Britain, fought alongside British soldiers, and considered themselves loyal British subjects. Most people don't realize that very few colonists wanted complete independence when tensions first began. Even after the famous Boston Tea Party in 1773, many still hoped the dispute could be resolved. They weren't trying to build a new country. They simply wanted what they believed were the rights of British citizens. But geography made the situation increasingly difficult. The Atlantic Ocean separated London from the colonies by more than 5,000 kilometers. News took weeks to travel. Orders from the British government often arrived long after events had changed. Colonial leaders believed decisions affecting their daily lives were being made by politicians who had never even seen America. Distance created frustration, and frustration slowly became rebellion. Then came the battles of Lexington and Concord in April 1775. The shooting had already started, but even then many Americans still hoped for reconciliation. This is where history takes an unexpected turn. The Declaration of Independence wasn't written to start a war. The war had already begun. Its real purpose was to explain, to Americans, to Britain, and to the rest of the world, why the colonies believed independence had become necessary. Thomas Jefferson drafted the document in just a few weeks, working alongside John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. He produced one of history's most influential political texts. But here's the twist. The opening paragraphs are what made it immortal. Most people remember the line, "All men are created equal." But those words were only the beginning. Jefferson argued that every person possesses natural rights simply by being human. Rights that no king could give, and no king could take away: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This idea was revolutionary. For centuries, European monarchs claimed authority through divine right. Kings ruled because God had supposedly chosen them. The Declaration turned that idea upside down. It argued that governments exist because people allow them to exist. The real reason governments have power, Jefferson wrote, is the consent of the governed. Think about how radical that sounded in 1776, instead of asking where kings received their authority. The Declaration asked a completely different question. Why should anyone rule without the people's permission? That single idea transformed politics forever. But this is where it gets strange. The Declaration itself didn't create democracy. It didn't establish elections. It didn't write a constitution. It didn't even create the government of the United States. That would happen years later with the Constitution in 1787. Instead, the Declaration created something even more powerful. A standard, an ideal, a promise. Of course, that promise was deeply imperfect. The words declared that all people were created equal. Yet slavery still existed. Women couldn't vote. Native Americans weren't included in the new political system. Many historians point to this contradiction as one of America's greatest paradoxes. But here's another twist. Those very words became the foundation for future generations to demand change. Abolitionists fighting slavery quoted the Declaration. Women's suffrage campaigners quoted the Declaration. Civil rights leaders quoted the Declaration. Perhaps no one understood this better than Abraham Lincoln. During the Civil War, nearly 90 years later, Lincoln argued that America wasn't defined merely by its borders or its constitution. It was defined by the ideals expressed in the Declaration. In his Gettysburg Address, he described the United States as conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all people are created equal. Lincoln transformed the Declaration from a revolutionary document into America's moral compass. And its influence didn't stop there. Most people don't realize that the Declaration inspired movements around the world. Its ideas influenced the French Revolution, Leaders in Latin America borrowed its language during their own independence struggles. Later, anti-colonial movements in Asia and Africa pointed to its principles when seeking freedom from European empires. Even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted after the Second World War, echoes many of the same ideas. One 18th century document helped shape the language of human rights across the globe. The real reason the Declaration still resonates isn't because it belongs only to American history. It's because it asks timeless questions. Where does political power come from? What rights belong to every human being? And what should people do when governments fail to protect those rights? Those questions remain just as relevant today as they were in 1776. Every democracy still wrestles with them. Every generation answers them differently. Every society debates them again and again. The Declaration doesn't provide every answer, but it changed the questions forever. That's why millions of people still read a document written 250 years ago. Not because it declared one nation's independence, but because it declared an idea that governments exist to serve the people, not the other way around. Empires rise and fall, borders are redrawn, constitutions are amended. But the simple belief that human rights exist before governments and that power ultimately belongs to the people remains one of the most enduring ideas ever written. And that is why the most powerful part of the Declaration was never independence. It was the idea that freedom belongs to everyone. Thanks for watching this video and sharing this amazing story with us. If you have found this useful, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.